Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something I like to call the stack of disasters, Earth before humans. Let's get right into it. So, I want you to just take a second and look around the room you're in right now. Notice the walls, the light shining above you, and think about the air just easily flowing in and out of your lungs without you even trying. It feels pretty comforting, right? It feels totally permanent, like the world has literally always been exactly like this, just waiting for us to show up and make ourselves at home. Well, I really hate to be the one to shatter that illusion, but if you were to rewind the clock far enough, this exact spot, literally the chair you are sitting in right now, would kill you in under a minute. Yeah, Earth got along just fine without us for more than 99% of its history, and it was ruled by things you wouldn't even recognize. Okay, so Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years, and wow, that is a dizzyingly massive number, isn't it? It's one your brain simply can't really hold on to. So let's forget the raw math for a second. Think of it more like this. Imagine a massive sports stadium filled absolutely to the brim with popcorn. If all of that popcorn represented the entire history of Earth, well, all of recorded human history would be equal to just one single kernel sitting near the very top of the pile. We are basically a single grain of sand in the Sahara, or just one drop of water in the entire ocean. And, that sheer scale naturally leads us to a pretty fascinating question. What would actually happen if you stepped out of a time machine onto Earth exactly 4.5 billion years ago? What would you see? What would you feel? Well, the first thing that happens is you die. Instantly. No way around it. There's absolutely no air you could breathe. If you look down, you wouldn't see soil or grass. Nope, the ground is literally a churning ocean of liquid rock. You'd be standing right on lava. And if you looked up, the sky wouldn't be that nice, comforting blue. It would glow this toxic, horrifying orange, kind of like the inside of a blast furnace, choked with a super thick haze of carbon dioxide. Oh, and if you looked for the moon, you wouldn't find it. It simply hasn't even formed yet. But crazily enough, out of that absolute hellscape came the very first lucky break in our planet's history. A completely different planet, about the size of Mars, scientists actually call it Theia, slammed right into the young Earth at an angle. It was a catastrophic, world-shattering collision that threw just an enormous spray of debris up into orbit. And over millions of years, that debris eventually clumped together into the moon you see up in the sky tonight. But here is the truly amazing part about all this. That exact same impact knocked our entire planet over by about 23 degrees. And that little tilt? That is the exact reason we have seasons today. If that impact had happened on a different day or even at a slightly different angle, we simply never would have happened. So moving on. Once the lava finally cooled down and the first oceans formed, life actually appeared. But for the next 2 billion years, Earth was completely unrecognizable. I mean, no plants, no animals, absolutely nothing with a face. The true rulers of Earth back then were just invisible, single-celled microbes. Basically specks of slime running the entire globe. And remember, there wasn't a single drop of oxygen in the air yet. If you took one breath, you'd drop right where you stood. But hey, do not mistake these little guys for being primitive. These specks ruled the planet longer than every plant, animal, and dinosaur combined. Then, those microbes did something that almost ended the whole shebang. Some of them figured out how to basically eat sunlight, a process we all know as photosynthesis. But photosynthesis gives off a waste gas, and that gas is oxygen. Now, to you and me, oxygen is literally life. But to almost everything alive back then, it was pure, unadulterated poison. As it built up in the air, it wiped out huge amounts of life that just couldn't handle it. Geologists very politely call this the Great Oxidation Event. But honestly, it was really one of the biggest, most toxic die-offs the planet has ever seen. And this new oxygen didn't just kill things off, it fundamentally altered the atmosphere itself. It completely stripped away the original gases that had been trapping the planet's heat. So without that insulation, the entire planet literally froze over. We're talking very possibly from pole to pole, turning into a giant single ball of ice floating in space. We call it Snowball Earth. So think about that for a second. The very air is sitting comfortably in your lungs right now. It's actually the leftover byproduct of a massive global catastrophe that nearly wiped out the very life that created it. Kind of wild, right? But life is stubborn. It clung on under that ice for over 1 billion years, remaining strictly microscopic. Then, a little over 500 million years ago, everything just completely shifted in a dramatic burst that we call the Cambrian explosion. Life suddenly got big, it got incredibly weird, and it got fast. The oceans just filled with creatures you could actually see with your own eyes. Life slowly crept out of the water onto bare rock, eventually building the very first soil. Fish grew legs, hauled themselves up onto dry land, and massive forests and swamps spread for thousands of miles. And by the way, remember those ancient forests? Because the coal we dig up and burn today, that's simply their buried remains. Now, let's fast forward to 260 million years ago, and the world gets genuinely alien. And I mean really alien. This is long, long before a single dinosaur even exists. The days are actually much shorter here, only about 22 hours long, because the planet was spinning a lot faster than it does today. And if you stepped onto dry land back then, there was absolutely no safety to be found anywhere.
So what was actually in charge? Well, it wasn't a T-Rex. It was a group of animals called gorgonopsids, which were some of the very first creatures to ever grow saber teeth. The biggest of the bunch was an absolute monster called Enos transtivia. Just try to picture a bear-sized killing machine with curved fangs as long as your hand, custom-built to slice straight through flesh. If you were a plant eater on land, it honestly didn't matter how big you grew. One of these monster apex predators was always waiting for you. Strangely enough, the absolute safest place to hide back then was actually underwater, mostly because the seas were relatively calm and mostly free of anything big enough to hurt you. But on land, there were no breaks. And then came the closest call life on Earth has ever had. Around 252 million years ago, a massive region in what is now Siberia simply tore open. It just ripped open and stayed that way for hundreds of thousands of years, pouring out lava across an area basically the size of Western Europe. It pumped out so much carbon dioxide that the entire planet literally roasted. The oceans heated up to bathwater temperatures. When the dust finally settled, 9 in 10 species were just gone, wiped out. It's known as the Great Dying, and it brought life within a single hair of total, absolute annihilation.
As you can imagine, it took a very long time to bridge the gap from that kind of absolute devastation. Life didn't truly recover for millions of years. But when it finally did, it arrived through rain. Around 234 million years ago, a continuous 2-million-year rainstorm turned a bone-dry world into a planet of constant, unending storms. And in that soggy, swampy landscape, dinosaurs, who had just been sort of minor background players up to that point, finally got their shot. They went from making up maybe 5% of land animals to over 90%. They completely conquered the Earth for over 150 million years, leading right up to their sudden, dramatic end about 66 million years ago. And that brings us to a single, terrible afternoon that completely rewrote the rules of the planet. Let's walk through this brutal domino effect together. Step 1. A massive 10-kilometer-wide asteroid hits the Earth. Step 2. That impact throws so much rock and ash up into the sky that the sun effectively just goes out for months. Step 3. Deprived of any light, the plants die in the dark. Step 4. Everything that eats those plants slowly starve to death. And finally, Step 5. The meat eaters who rely on those plant eaters, well, they starve right behind them. The giants of the world simply stood no chance. But who actually did survive that apocalypse? The small, furry, frightened little things. Our ancestors. They survived purely because they were small, they could burrow deep underground to wait it out, and they could eat almost anything they found. They literally crawled through the wreckage of a completely destroyed world. Think about it. If that asteroid misses by even a few minutes, the dinosaurs keep running the show forever, and those little furry survivors stay forever forgettable. That devastating asteroid didn't just end a world, it opened the only lore we ever had. And here is just a profoundly humbling fact to wrap your head around. Even when our own species, Homo sapiens, finally appeared roughly 300,000 years ago, we did not have the world to ourselves. Not at all. We actually shared the planet with at least 4 other human species at the exact same time. Other kinds of people, just as real, just as alive as we are today. But now, every single one of them is entirely gone. We are literally the only ones left standing. So look around your room just one more time. Everything you see, everything you are, is delicately balanced on top of a massive stack of disasters, a frozen planet, extinctions that nearly wiped the entire board clean, and a stray space rock that erased a whole world just to make room for yours. It's exactly as the saying goes, we are the survivors of the survivors of the survivors. The world wasn't just some warm-up act waiting for us to take the stage. Humanity was never the central point of the universe. We're really just the incredibly lucky byproduct of 4.5 billion years of total chaos. So what will you do with your place in the timeline? Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer. I'll catch you next time.